resident idiot. Stupid headphone show on the by director's Gary.
The Air Force B-21 Raider is a long-range, highly survivable, penetrating strike stealth bomber able to carry 8 cruise missiles in its weapons bay, all for a cost of $692 million per copy. Now, the Ray Samuels B-21 Raider is an imposing electrical force capable of taming the most demanding headphones ever invented, including dynamic and planar magnetic drivers as well as electrostatic headphones, all for a cost of $12,500. A relative bargain compared to its military alternative, don't you think? Hey everybody, welcome back to the Director's Garage. I'm your host and resident idiot, Michael, and I'll admit, I'm as lucky as it gets, and this is as exclusive as it gets. Only one other person has spent time with this amazing Ray Samuels B-21 Raider amp. And it's your subscriptions to the channel that give me just enough of a profile to make legends like Ray take notice. So consider subscribing if you haven't. Now, I'm going to state up front that this was planned out to be a long episode. But as I was writing it, I realized I've got too much material here for one show. It would be an hour long, and y'all don't stick around that long. I have data to prove it, so I'm splitting this apart into 2 episodes. You won't have to wait forever, though. You'll get part 2 in only a few days, and there's a big twist coming in this episode, so stick around. I swear it's going to be worth it. All right, but let's get going with our B-21 exclusive. No one else has made a video about this amp, and in part 1 we're going to look at how this amp happened. We're going to talk about what it does best, get into some headphone and amp comparisons and pairings, and then in episode 2 things will go completely off the rails, I promise. Does that sound good? Now, I've had the good fortune of spending around a month with the Ray Samuels Audio B-21 Raider dynamic and electrostatic headphone amplifier. This amp has astounded me at every turn, and I'll state up front that I love this thing. I want one desperately, but it is, as I mentioned at the top of the show, 12,500 lottery tickets or 2,500 6-packs of Coke, and worth every penny, in my opinion. That said, it's a miracle this amp ever got made.
Tell me a story, but don't take too long.
You see, Ray Samuels was retired. He'd done it all. He worked on electronics in the military's most sophisticated aircraft and weapon systems. He left the service to become a Top Gun amp maker in the headphone industry for a decade or more. He conquered every challenge in front of him. Desktop, portable, tubes, integrated amps, you name it, Ray built it. And I can't remember a single product that ever got shot down over enemy territory. Now, he was done making products and dealing with our motley crew of critics and snobs. Well, there was one more piece of unfinished business, and a guy like Ray doesn't like idle hands. He prefers to be active and taking on projects, and he'd been thinking of doing one last design, one that would draw from his decades of knowledge, and he converged on the concept of a single amp capable of driving electrostatics and or dynamics and or planar magnetics, one amp to rule them all and drive them to their utmost potential. So what's it gonna take? Well, power. Cue your favorite song.
It's about power. Director's Garage.
That one goes out to the haters. Yeah, we're talking about power, folks. Not just power, hey, let's make some loud noises power, but I'm talking tapping into Thor's hammer of the gods, reaching into your soul and mainlining music into the depths of your subconscious while rattling your inner Edison power. Power with a purity that would have confounded Nikolai Tesla. Okay, I can wax poetic for episodes on the amount of power we're talking here, but it's around 20 watts per channel, 1 amp per side, 60 volts per side. Yeah, this amp fundamentally moves me. It's made me reconsider life choices like, do I really need a car to pay my mortgage on time? In practical terms, it looks like pushing the tungsten into the pain threshold at just half volume. Oh, but it's not just loudness, folks. It's doing so while delivering molar-rattling sub-bass that would please the snootiest connoisseur of bass, namely me. It pushes the Sesfara into bass slam that I've only experienced from one other amp, the Enlium 23R, and that came with the asterisk of high gain, meaning it was noisy AF, but pleasing on a playground level that would make a third grader lighting off M80s in the school parking lot cheer with glee. I make big boom. But this big boom comes with a dead quiet circuit and a couple of handfuls of giant capacitors eager to ignite any headphone that's calling for a little more oomph. That boom, that bass presence, lights up your ears at any volume. You don't have to be pressing the Sesfara into the upper decibel levels to get robust, emotional bass. It's there as a constant. But here's the thing, and it's a really big thing. I spent a lot of time talking about the Modhouse, Tungsten, and the Sesfara, but drop down to an easier to drive headphone like, say, the ZMF Atrium, and the B-21 delivers sonic bliss that makes you wonder what the hype about the Sesfara is really about. The B-21 elevates that headphone into an upper echelon, top tier experience, and it does it with just 0.6 volts coming from your deck of choice. Lush mids, solid state precision, supreme speed, and you get to push lots of happy electrons to a biocellulose driver that is ever ready to jump and dance and push a lot of air. The Atrium lit up like a pinball machine as if someone tapped into a subsonic layer of its dynamic driver, awakening a beast after a few years of hibernation. Now, the Caldera adds more detail to the experience. I mean, it's got more speed than Sammy Hagar has tickets. The bass is a little less playful, but it thickens, more like a wall of bass effect. Think Phil Spector, but before the whole murder thing. And you get the bigger stage of an open back planar. That's pretty nice. Neither the Atrium or the Caldera are necessarily better. I think they just kind of scratch different itches. The Caldera likes a little bit more power. Think about 2 volts, which is pretty much a standard DAC output. But when I think about it, I think of the Atrium as more of a tube-happy headphone, and the Caldera kind of loves solid-state amps. If I had to choose one between those two, it would be the Caldera here. Now move over to the LCD-4, the Abyss 1266TC, and the bass rumble hits Star Wars level. Think big Imperial Star Destroyers dwarfing your meager, tiny little CR Corvette. Now, it's not just the air it's moving, but it's the cleanliness and the snappiness of that sub that is truly astounding. Now, the Abyss 1266TC, well, this is one of the primary headphones that Ray used in tuning the B-21. And cranked up with some Zeppelin, there was an impressive image that came into focus immediately, and a spectacular stage. Though I had to play a lot with the headphone placement, it's a bit tricky on the Abyss sometimes, and you gotta spend some time with it to get a great result. And I wound up with a surprising amount of toe in on the headphone, but once you get it right, oh man, it's sensational. And yes, I look like Frankenstein. Now, by this point in the review, I was swapping headphones faster than a tuna sandwich at lunchtime in a room filled with PB&J. It was a headphone hot potato, and every swap introduced some new level of dynamic punch or wide stage that the next headphone had never delivered, at least to my recollection. But then, you do a palette cleanser. You flip over to the E-Stat side where the X9000 decided it would join the bass party as well, but with a level of detail across the treble that mere mortal dynamic headphones could only beg for. Low gain, 6 volts out of the DAC, and the Stax is swimming in a lush, though not quite as emotional bottom end, but Oh yeah, you get the detail on a level that makes the Meze Elite ponder its very existence, and a focus on the image that makes my Nikon look soft. In short, you get it all with this amp. You can satisfy your inner Gillespie with an E-stat, and then with a simple flip of a switch, you call upon the hammer of the gods with some vintage Zeppelin. Both experiences are equally satisfying and delightfully thrilling. This trick has been tried before in a few other amps. Linear tube audio comes to mind, but never to this degree of excellence and proficiency. The B-21 made short work of my best current overall headphone amp, the Zale HM1. It delivered a wider stage and equaled its detail, and did it with a lot more power. In fact, I've never heard a headphone amplifier drive the Sysfar and the Modhouse Tungsten to this impressive level of greatness. It's quite simply the best dynamic headphone amplifier I've ever experienced, with the asterisk that I've yet to audition the Mass Kobo 465 nor the Riviera Labs AIC-10. The HM1 does have a few party tricks that the B-21 doesn't, like subtle tone control and spatial effects. But on the B-21, you don't need any of that voodoo. The amplifier delivers on its promise. Pay the steep entry fee, enjoy the show. Thank you very much. Now go on your way. But this is a dual-purpose amplifier, and on the electrostatic side, I compared it to my current top amp, the Molnar Audio KGSSHV Carbon CC amp, or the alphabet amp as I call it. But I found the B-21 to be a little narrower and even maybe a little more grainy than the KGSSHV. Not to say that the B-21 is a noisy amp, but the quiet sections of music on the Molnar sounded darker. I was listening to jazz on the pawn shop, and Take 5 really stood out. There are also great contrasts in dynamics, like on Jeep's Blues, and the quiet sections of that song sounded like they breathed a little more on the alphabet amp in comparison to the B-21. It wasn't by a lot. These amps are both excellent, but it was noticeable. And I tried many different genres, and I consistently favored the Molnar to the B-21. The B-21 does have a bit warmer tone to it and more powerful bass activation deep. I heard that easily, but the benefits of the Molnar's increase in stage and decrease in noise, the darker sections of music sounding clearer and more focused, those attributes outclassed the B-21, in my opinion, by a wide enough margin for me to call the KGS my favorite of the two amps. But before you say game over, there are two things to consider. Now, the first is I'm doing this test with the SRX 9000, which is Stack's current flagship. When I swapped headphones to the 007 Mark I, well, that headphone was gorgeous on the B-21 in its current configuration. Remember that phrase, current configuration. Now, in fact, I preferred the 007 Mark I on the B-21 over the KGSSHV. Mind you, we're talking about probably slivers of degrees here, but the 007 Mark I lit up more on the B-21. So what's that second consideration about? So I spoke with Ray about my KGSSHV preference. You feel a little bad, but I gotta be honest with him. And he told me, well, the B-21, as it was shipped to me, is currently tuned to maximize bass performance and presence at the sacrifice to openness and stage. Now, it can be tuned, it turns out, to give you that open sound by swapping out 4 of the main capacitors for lower voltages. And to my way of thinking, I turned to E-stat specifically for that openness and detail. If I want bass drive, that's what my dynamic headphones are for. And what emerged was a real reviewer conundrum. Well, what does this differently tuned B-21 sound like? And how do I hear it? Because I can only review the product that's in front of me, right? Well, what if there were another suitcase? And what if I told you that Ray sent me a power supply with the lower output caps in it, just to hear and test out and see if I like the alternative. Who does this? Ray Samuels, that's who. So if the guy who basically gives you a lifetime warranty on parts for any of his products he's ever made, if that can't push you over the fence on whether or not to buy this amp, I don't know what to tell you guys. Now, you know I love a good cliffhanger, so we're going to end this episode here. I know. But everyone I know who does YouTube swears that these long episodes are channel killers. So in a few days, we're going to come back with part 2, and we're going to open up this case and check out this already amazing amp with a tuning that's a little more open and airy on the electrostatic side. This episode and the next are the result of a lot of collaboration and planning. Shipped equipment, testing time for weeks, days of shooting and editing. So before we break, can I ask you guys to subscribe to this channel? It's your subscriptions that make this level of show possible. There is so much more ahead. Part 2 of this episode will start right where we're leaving off. In fact, I'm just going to keep rolling and shoot it after ending this episode. I want to thank you guys for dropping by the garage today, and I'll see you for part 2 of the B-21 Radar review from Ray Samuels before you know it.
You're a resident. Ooh, idiot. Stupid.
Head